Welcome back to the deep dive. So we've got a fascinating topic today, one that, well, it's usually buried under a lot of cinematic flair, let's say.
That's a diplomatic way to put it. Heavy metal aesthetics. Decades-old hysteria.
Exactly. We're talking about modern Satanism. And if you're looking for a way to cut through all that noise to get straight to the facts, that's what we're doing today.
Right. Our mission here is really to separate the fact from the folklore. We're going to take this concept and just look at it through the lens of history, philosophy, and, the actual texts people use.
And your sources have given us a great roadmap. We're going to tackle some key questions. First, when and how did modern Satanism actually start?
A very clear starting point, which helps.
It does. Then, what are its core beliefs? We'll also dig into the role of food in their rituals, which is fascinating.
And often completely misunderstood.
And finally, we'll look at the different types that exist and the truth about their so-called places of worship. So let's jump in.
Let's do it. The origin story is the best place to start because it just immediately busts that myth of it being some ancient hidden cult.
Okay, so the moment is, as you said, really specific. We're talking about the counterculture of the 60s.
We are. San Francisco, 1966.
And this is the founding of the Church of Satan by Anton LaVey.
Exactly. And that date, 1966, it's a huge historical dividing line. Because before that, devil worship was an accusation. It was an external imputation, something hurled at you by the church or the state.
Right, a tool for persecution.
Precisely. This date marks the first time a group of people stood up and said, no, we are clouding this term. We are Satanists. It was a deliberate act of philosophical ownership.
Which begs the immediate question, why? I mean, if you're creating a new humanistic philosophy, why use that name? That's got to be the most loaded term you could possibly pick.
It's completely deliberate,
Yeah.
and you have to understand the symbolic function, or none of it makes sense. In this context, Satan is not a metaphysical being.
He's not a literal guy with horns and a pitchfork.
Not at all. He is a symbol. He's the ultimate symbol of human defiance.
Defiance against what, specifically?
Against imposed dogma. Against unquestioned authority. In this modern context, Satan represents all the things ascetic religions condemn: knowledge, desire, ego, justified rebellion.
So less of a king of hell and more like Prometheus, the figure who brought fire to humanity.
That's a perfect analogy, or Lucifer, the light-bringer from the Enlightenment. LaVey himself said it was the non-denial of the animal nature of man. It's fundamentally an anti-obedience philosophy.
So it's not a counter-religion trying to replace God with a different God. It's a rejection of the whole structure.
Exactly. Which leads us right into its core beliefs. Because if you throw out the old rules, you have to decide what you believe in instead.
So let's unpack that. What are the pillars of this new philosophy?
There are really three core pillars, and they're all in direct opposition to traditional Judeo-Christian ideas of asceticism.
Okay, what's the first one?
The first pillar. The body is sacred. This just immediately gets rid of that soul-body duality, the idea that the body is just a flawed, temporary vessel for a pure soul.
Right, the idea that the flesh is weak or sinful.
They reject that entirely. For them, the physical, lived experience is what's paramount.
Okay, and the second pillar?
Pleasure is not a sin. It's actually something to be pursued. It's about indulgence, but controlled indulgence, fulfilling your natural desires instead of just suppressing them because you've been told to.
Which is, again, a complete 180 from doctrines where suffering is seen as virtuous.
A complete 180. And that brings us to the third pillar, which really sums it all up.
And that is?
Man is his own God. This puts the individual, your will, your judgment, your self-determination, right at the center of everything. There's no need for an external divine judge because you are responsible for your own morality.
I can see how this would have a huge impact on something like food. I mean, traditional religions are filled with rules about eating, fasts, forbidden foods.
Absolutely. If you accept these three pillars, the whole religious framework around food just collapses. The old formula was that hunger equals virtue. Fasting makes you holy.
Restricting what's on your table makes you spiritually superior.
Yes, it elevates scarcity. Modern Satanism rejects that. Food isn't a sinful temptation to be overcome. Instead, eating becomes a show of will.
A demonstration of freedom.
Exactly. The freedom to choose what you consume when you consume it. Conscious indulgence is an affirmation of the self.
Okay, so let's move from that philosophy to the practice. This is where the myths really start to fly. The question of ritual meals. Is there some kind of compulsory dark menu?
No. The short answer is a hard no. There is no compulsory ritual meal. There's no mandate for specific foods in any of the major modern organizations.
It's going to surprise a lot of people. So if there's no required menu, how does food or drink even factor into their ritual?
Well, you have to understand the ritual itself is usually a psychological tool. We can really break them into two types. First, you have what they call symbolic rituals or psychodrama.
Psychodrama. That sounds a little intense. What does that mean in this context?
It's actually very functional. It's like a form of self-therapy. The whole point is to externalize and process some powerful, suppressed emotion, anger, fear, desire.
So it's a performance designed for a mental breakthrough for the person doing it.
You've got it. It's a service for the self, not to some entity. And in those rituals, certain items might be used to heighten the experience. But they're just tools. They're not sacraments.
What kind of items are we talking about?
Things that have a strong symbolic or sensory connection. Red wine, which can symbolize life or vitality. Red meat, symbolizing our carnal, bodily nature. Even spicy foods to act as a stimulant for the senses.
But none of it is mandatory.
Not at all. The materials are interchangeable. The only thing that matters is the psychological effect on the individual.
Okay, and what's the second type of gathering?
Much more mundane. They're just social gatherings. Dinners, parties, wine tastings. Outwardly, they look totally ordinary. But inwardly, they're a conscious application of the philosophy, celebrating pleasure and achievement.
Right. Now we have to talk about the elephant in the room, the claims of blood, sacrifice, and savagery. If the philosophy is about self-preservation, where did these ideas even come from?
The sources are very clear on this. The ideas came from outside the movement, not from within. You have two main flashpoints. First, the exaggerated texts from the medieval Inquisition.
Which needed a terrifying enemy to justify its own power.
Of course. But more recently, and much more damaging, was the satanic panic in the U.S. in the 1980s.
That seemed to really warp public perception for decades. How did it get so out of control?
It was a classic moral panic. It was fueled by sensationalist media and some very questionable psychological trends, especially recovered memory therapy.
And these wild allegations of atrocities just spread everywhere.
They spread like wildfire. But when legal and academic authorities actually investigated them, what did they find?
Nothing, right?
Absolutely nothing. The FBI's own investigation found no evidence of any systematic human or blood sacrifice. Their final reports basically call the claims imaginary. For a modern Satanist, the idea of human sacrifice is it's absurd. It's the opposite of their core belief in self-preservation.
That's such a critical piece of context. Now, let's shift gears a bit, because not all of these groups are the same. Can you break down the different streams of modern Satanism?
I can. The sources usually point to four main categories, and the big dividing line is atheistic versus theistic.
So let's start with the first and biggest one.
That would be LaVeyan Satanism from 1966. It's the most common form, and it is strictly atheistic. The devil is only a symbol, a psychological archetype. The focus is all on individualism and philosophy.
And on the other side of that coin, the ones who do believe in a literal entity.
That's theistic Satanism. They believe in a real supernatural being named Satan. But these are very small, very closed groups. There's not a lot of academic data on them for that reason.
And where does a term like Luciferianism fit in?
Luciferianism is interesting. It's distinct. It views Lucifer as a symbol of knowledge and enlightenment, the light bringer. It's often more esoteric, more philosophical than the kind of materialism you see in LaVeyanism.
And the newest major player, the one that's been in the news a lot.
That's the Satanic Temple, founded around 2013. Their main focus is political and legal activism.
Right. They use their religious status to challenge laws.
Exactly. Defending religious freedom, bodily autonomy, the separation of church and state. Their rituals are very theatrical and symbolic, but they're designed to make a public political point. It's rebellion through the court system.
It's fascinating. That spirit of rebellion from '66 is now being channeled into legal briefs. Let's talk about the final piece, the buildings. Do these groups have central temples like other religions?
And this is another one of those surprising realities. For the Church of Satan, the original group, the answer is no. There's no official central temple, no network of churches or mosques.
Because the focus is on the individual.
Right. Rituals are done alone or in small private groups. It's a very decentralized organization.
What about the Satanic Temple? They seem more visible.
They do have meeting areas in some places, but they function more as legal and cultural centers than as traditional temples for worship. The idea of a mandatory weekly public service just isn't really part of the modern movement's DNA.
Which brings us right back to the philosophy of the dinner table. It feels like that idea ties all of this together.
It really does. The decentralized structure, the focus on the individual,
Mhm.
it all comes back to this core concept. The table is an area of consciousness, not sin. It's a place to display choice, not submit to hunger.
So if food is shared at a gathering, it's not an offering.
No, it's defined as a commonality of will, a shared celebration of individual choices. There's a quote from the sources that sums it up perfectly. If man can choose what he eats, he is free. It completely inverts the old model of restriction.
What an illuminating deep dive. So to recap for everyone listening, here are the key takeaways. Modern Satanism began in 1966.
It's largely an atheistic philosophy.
The wild claims of systematic sacrifice were thoroughly debunked by law enforcement.
And its major organizations don't require central places of worship.
Right. And what's the final thought we should leave everyone with?
I think the most powerful takeaway from the sources is the irony of it all.
Hmm.
Historically, the most feared tables are, in reality, the least mystical. The amount of public panic is almost perfectly inverted to the actual ritualistic requirements.
That's a fascinating point, and it opens up so many other questions for you to think about, like, why do moral panics like the Satanic Panic take hold? Or why do so many religions build their morality around controlling food? It really makes you reflect on how often fear and not fact shapes our view of the world.
Exactly. A great place to end.
Thank you for joining us for this deep dive. We'll see you next time.